What if the thoughts you identify with aren't who you truly are? And what if they're simply the result of conditioning? Welcome to the High Frequency Mind, a contemporary philosophy of consciousness exploring the relationship between awareness and the human experience. I'm Lindsay Goodwin, the consciousness medium, and each week we explore neuroscience, the subconscious mind, nervous system regulation, intuition, spirituality, and consciousness to understand how conditioning shapes perception and how awareness transforms the way we experience ourselves and the world. This isn't self-help. It isn't another cookie-cutter manifestation podcast promising your dream life. It's a deeper exploration into consciousness, awareness, and the human experience. Because the goal has never been about trying to escape your humanity. It is to understand consciousness through it. Recognize the difference between awareness and conditioning, and learn to live the human experience consciously. So take a deep breath, return to the frequency of your heart, and awaken to the awareness that has been within you all along. Welcome to the High Frequency Mind. Let's get curious, cut through the noise, and let's go within. What if I told you your brain isn't simply observing reality, but it's actively predicting it? And right now, before you consciously process what's happening around you, your brain is making predictions about what it expects to see, hear, and experience next. And today, we're exploring the science behind the high frequency mind. We'll look at what neuroscience tells us about the brain and then explore how those discoveries intersect with the philosophy of the high frequency mind. Because if your brain is constantly predicting, filtering, and interpreting your experience, who is the one aware of it all? Before we dive into the neuroscience, I want to take a step back and answer a simple question. I want you to just think about this. Why does understanding the brain even matter? Because whether we realize it or not, every experience we have is filtered through it. And let's just get right down to the detail. That means every thought, every emotion, every memory, every belief, and every decision, everything we're perceiving about ourselves and the world around us is processed through one incredible complex organ, which is known as our brain. And if we want to understand ourselves more deeply, then we first have to understand, at least in a basic way, how the brain is working. And now here's something I think surprises a lot of people. Your brain's primary job isn't to make you happy. It isn't to help you become more spiritual, and it isn't trying to help you manifest your dream life. Your brain has one primary responsibility, and that is to keep you alive, to keep you surviving in this human experience. That is what your brain knows. And to do that, it constantly is gathering information from your senses. It compares it to past experiences, and it's looking for familiar patterns, which predict what it thinks will happen next and is preparing your body to respond. This is really interesting. And what is so fascinating is that almost all of this happens before you're consciously even aware of it. So understanding our brain, even to a basic level, and we're getting pretty basic of understanding the brain today. We're not going to go into crazy neuroscience of the details of the anatomy of the brain, but understanding how your brain is functioning should be basic life 101. This should be taught in schools so that people really understand how to empower themselves, like yourself, of really understanding what your brain is doing and really what its function is, and that you are not your brain. Your brain is part of the human experience, and you are having a temporary human experience. So your conscious mind is only experiencing the final product of millions of unconscious processes that are happening every second. So why does this happen? And why does this matter for the high frequency mind? And this podcast is the high frequency mind, but my entire philosophy is the high frequency mind. And I also have a book coming out that is also called The High Frequency Mind, which goes into much more detail of my philosophy and the architecture of the infinite self and how that goes through the different understandings of consciousness from both a neuroscience perspective, integrating with the spiritual of understanding more of sort of the unknown territories. We can't possibly understand in full capacity because we're having a human experience about really those unknown parts. So my whole philosophy is I don't believe anyone has all the answers, and anyone that's trying to tell you that they do is not that evolved, because that just isn't true. This universe is constantly changing, and it's really about the curiosity, about being curious about many different perspectives. So that's really what I'm here helping you and others to understand is that your perspective is unique to you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that anything has to be proven for you to believe something. But I do believe in science as well, but science also started as a thought. Someone had an idea and then was able to prove it through science. So everything starts as a thought in the ether, you could say, and however you want to think about that, universe, God, whatever it is, inspiration, starts as a thought, and then it turns into something more tangible. But here, back to thinking about why does this matter to the high frequency mind? Because many of us believe we're experiencing reality exactly as it is. And the thing is reality is constantly changing. So it doesn't ever stay the same. I mean, think about it like this. Could you take a rake and try to rake the ocean and hold on to it with a rake? No, you can't do that because it's going to move. Water moves, it's fluid, it's everlasting changing. And that's really what reality is it's constantly changing. And so neuroscience suggests something that's much more fascinating. We're going to get more into this and how this relates to the high frequency mind, that we're experiencing reality through the lens of how our brain is really predicting based on memories, beliefs, and previous experiences. And that's where manifestation really becomes an interesting conversation. And I don't mean manifestation of all this, what I really think is garbage now, of that manifestation is something that it's really not. Manifestation is not outside of you. It is something that's always within. And it's really about your belief system. And it's not about sitting down and doing journaling and if you're not believing in that, you're not going to manifest that. You can't just sit and write so many affirmations over and over and over again and expect that to actually manifest if you don't truly believe it. So I won't get into that too much, but there is a lot of information out there about manifesting. It's very regurgitated, recycled information. Everyone's talking about manifesting your dream life. I just think that it's so much deeper than that. So I'm always empowering you, wanting you to have the awareness to really listen and consume what really feels aligned for you. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're most likely asking bigger questions about maybe what seems to be a trend, or you're tired of hearing it. And this is why you're choosing to listen to a different perspective. And I'm right there with you. And this is part of the reason why I created this podcast, because it's so much about education now, but education in a way that you can actually embody this information versus relying externally on someone else to really be able to guide you, like join some huge program or something, or join a retreat. And I'm not saying all this stuff is bad, but manifestation, again, is often reduced to the whole toxic positive thinking or changing your mindset. It's just not that easy. It's so much about your subconscious mind and really learning about those patterns. And this can be something that can take a lot of consistent effort. I don't know if effort is really the word I want to use. Consistency, I think, is probably a better word. And dedication to really change your subconscious mind, because that's really where all the manifestation is happening anyway. It's your belief system. So it's not just about being positive and changing your mindset. I mean, if it were that easy, everyone would be able to manifest easy. And I'm not saying that manifestation is necessarily difficult, but I think it's quite a misconception, making people believe that all they have to do is just change their mindset and think positively, and that's all you manifest. No, it's rewiring your nervous system. It's learning about your brain. It's learning about your patterns and the awareness of having the awareness of observing them and realizing that you're not your thoughts, and that it's going out of identities. There's a lot going on there, but neuroscience is also suggesting that there's another layer to this. And before you consciously choose a thought, your brain has already filtered information and made predictions, interpreted what it believes is happening, and began preparing your response. And those predictions are shaped by previous experiences, conditioning, and beliefs. And if you've spent years believing you're not enough, just for example, your brain naturally becomes more sensitive to evidence that appears to confirm that belief. So you're gonna experience and see what you believe. It's just how your brain works. So this is not, again, back to manifestation. This is not something that's outside of you. This is all within. This is what your own brain is predicting, your belief system. It's the same thing of, believing too much that, my spirit guides and angels and are sending me all these messages. I'm not saying that I don't believe that, but let's be real here. Is it really that, or is it that you're expecting that, so your brain is actually giving you what you're expecting? So I want everyone to understand that we can't rely solely on something outside of us to be guiding us. We have to get to a point as evolved beings, evolved consciousness, evolved and awake humans, remembering our true nature, that we are the one controlling the journey. There isn't an angel controlling your journey. You're controlling your journey. Are there guides? Yes, absolutely. But your guides don't want you to put all of your power outside of you and believe that somehow that they're in control of your journey. That's just not how it works. I mean, if you think about that logically, that doesn't make any sense, because you chose to incarnate into this experience to learn how to wake up, to remember who you are. So your guides are guides, which means that they're assisting you. They're not making the decisions for you. They're sending you signals, but some of those signals are coming from your higher self. And I think often in the spiritual community, the new age community, there's this talk of this mainstream, oh, my angel sent me those numbers, or, my guide sent me that. Well, what if your higher self sent you that? What if that's just within your consciousness? Or what if it's actually just your brain expecting that? See, there's a lot of different perspectives, and this is why I remain curious about the experience, because I don't have all the answers. I talk about philosophy. I talk about what I know as far as based on my own perception and experience. But maybe this is something that others need. And my message, I believe in authenticity. I believe it's so important for us to be who we are because we are unique and there are other people, souls that need the information that you have. So don't hold back. And that's why I don't hold back. I just am expressing what I know based on my own perception and based on my philosophies of what I believe is a possibility. Remember, there's infinite possibilities of really what could be happening. But also remembering that reality only, even quantum physics is saying this, that reality only has meaning until you give it meaning. So it's quite interesting. I mean, we can really go down that rabbit hole, but back to what we were talking about these predictions in the brain. These predictions are shaped by the previous experiences that we talked about, conditioning and beliefs. And like I said, if you've spent time believing something, then you're going to actually experience that because your brain is always looking for proof. And if you've learned also maybe that you can't trust people, then your attention is more likely to notice signs of rejection or betrayal because the brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to make sense of the world using patterns that helped navigate in the past. And that's why understanding the brain matters. Like I said, it's so important to understand this basic stuff. Even if you understand basic stuff, you're going to really be able to make sense of your experience. And before we talk about changing beliefs, and before we talk too much about consciousness, we are going to talk about really what the high frequency mind is. And we first need to understand one of the biggest discoveries in modern science, that your brain isn't waiting for reality to happen. It's constantly predicting it. And your brain is constantly predicting your experience. And now that we've had this basic understanding of what your brain is designed to do, let's take a deeper look into the most important discoveries in modern science of your brain doesn't simply observe the world around it, it actively predicts it. And most of us assume that we experience reality exactly as it is. We imagine our eyes are collecting the information, sending it to our brain, and the brain is creating an accurate picture of the outside world. While that seems intuitive, researchers now are understanding that the process is much more dynamic. Your brain is actually constantly making predictions based on everything it has learned throughout your life. And really, it's comparing incoming sensory information with your memories, previous experiences, emotions, and beliefs to generate its best estimate of what's happening and what is likely to happen next. And this really is allowing your brain to process information incredibly efficiently. Crazy. If you've ever picked up, for example, a box and expecting it to be empty only to find that it's much heavier than anticipated, you've experienced what neuroscientists call prediction error. Your brain expected one thing, but reality delivered something different, and your nervous system had to adjust almost instantly. So I want to give you a couple of examples. So the other day I was pulling something out of my cabinet and I thought that I was watering my plants, and I thought that what I was pulling out was actually this plastic watering container that I use for my plants. But I pulled out, my hand went for something that looked very similar, which was the glass measuring cup. And when I pulled that, I was expecting the plastic, which is very light. And when I pulled out the glass measuring cup, it was very heavy. And it was just a weird sensation because my brain had already predicted what I was going to pull out of the cabinet. And I know that everyone has experienced something like this. I remember that show Fear Factor. They used to have people put their hands in they would expect to be putting their hands in something and then it would be worms or something like that. And so it creates this different, the brain is expecting something, but it gets something else. And it's a very interesting experience. And then I had another experience that happened last week. I was lifting weights and I thought that I had put a certain amount on the weight. I was doing a weight machine for my legs, and I thought I'd put a certain amount on the weight machine to lift. And it turns out that I was lifting 30 more pounds than I thought I was, and it felt totally normal. And then I went and I looked at my app because I track my workouts, and I had never lifted that much before. And what I realized is how powerful, I mean, I already know this, but it's just so great to have all these experiences happening all the time. It's just always confirmation. And I was lifting 30 pounds more than I normally would. And it just showed me how much stronger I actually am. But do our brains get in the way of making us believe that we can't do something because of patterns? Because I was used to lifting a certain amount of weight and thought I couldn't lift 30 more pounds. So it's just really interesting. There's such an integration of the unknown with what we know, the physical reality, and we have to pay attention to this. This can't just be that, obviously there's a whole world of people that it's not you, and I know you know what I'm talking about, but an entire world of people that completely do not understand what we're talking about. There just isn't the awareness. They're in a totally different dimension. They live on Earth, but a totally different dimension. Dimensions are just levels of awareness, essentially, is what they are. And so, just this curiosity. I mean, just being curious about life. It's not even life, just the human experience. It's just it makes it so much fun. So this process, back to prediction error, it's really the same process is occurring psychologically. If you also think about a friend, maybe this is how perspectives can be different. Perception, which is more in detail of how you're viewing things. And everyone can have totally different perceptions. That's why two people can think one person can think one way and the other person can think a different way and have a totally different experience based on their perception. So for example, if a friend doesn't respond to your text message, someone might immediately, because of their brain and based on what they've experienced in their life and what they're continuing to hang on to in their subconscious mind and belief system, that they start wanting to come up with explanations why that person's not messaging them back. And maybe if someone has experienced a lot of rejection in the past, they may predict that maybe they've upset that person and that's why they haven't texted back. Whereas someone else that hasn't experienced those similar sort of situations or has done the healing work to remove those layers and get back to their authentic self, they might just see it as maybe they're busy. Maybe it's not that they did anything wrong or you did anything wrong. It's just that they're busy. But these events are actually identical. But the prediction is different because each brain is drawing from different set of experiences. Really interesting stuff. And this doesn't mean your brain is broken or not working or working against you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's doing exactly what it's evolved to do. The challenge is that predictions that once helped us navigate the past don't always reflect the present. So we got to start having that awareness about, is this really something that I want to keep doing? Do I like this? Do I feel good? And you've got to start asking questions. You got to get curious. You got to start asking bigger questions about really maybe why you were doing things. And it starts with just having the awareness to start noticing what you're doing. So really, why do our beliefs really shape our experience? I mean, you're in a place where your past feeling defensive about it or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, but it can be hard to tell people that because it's never about trying to say people are creating this for themselves. It's because they're completely unaware that they're doing it. But so it's never about shame or guilt. But our beliefs are essentially creating what we're experiencing because it's attached to the brain. What you're believing, what you're predicting is what you're going to experience. And does that happen every single time? No. Do I have an explanation of why that doesn't happen every single time? I don't. Again, I don't have all the answers. Only the universe understands the mechanism of how everything is working, but also remembering that, things are constantly changing. But really beliefs as ideas that have we consciously chosen them? Yes, every time we keep choosing to feed the energy into them and be unaware of them, we keep choosing them. But did they start by you choosing them? Probably not. Probably belief systems that have been developed over a long period of time through generations. That's where it starts. And it could be your own experiences. It could be family experiences. It could be emotional learning. It could be culture. It could be education. It could be conclusions that you've reached about yourself and the world. Conditioning is basically what it is. And over time, these conclusions really become the framework through which the brain interprets the new experiences if you're not aware of it. And if someone repeatedly hears as a child, for example, that they need to be perfect to be accepted, which happens a lot. I don't know if it's happening as much anymore because I think humans are evolving, at least in our dimension of what we're experiencing. But there are, again, like I said, there are other dimensions that are going on in this earth that you're not in, where it may be very different than what you're experiencing. But I feel the kids now, it's very, very much more open in a lot of ways I always mentor my clients in a way if they have kids that bringing your kids to the understanding that it's okay to be authentic. It's okay to be who you are, because then you don't have to try to break those patterns when you are in your 30s or 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. So as a child, back to if you were raised in your family, or if it was in your family ancestry through generational patterns about perfection, then you might carry in your brain that you might start interpreting mistakes as evidence that you're not enough. Maybe this was a pattern that you worked through. And if someone is growing up feeling emotionally safe and supported, like what I was talking about feeling comfortable in their authentic energies, and that it's okay to be who they are. It's okay to make mistakes. I don't ever believe anything's a mistake, but because we're always exactly where we need to be at that particular time for our evolving. But maybe something that wasn't quite ideal that you learned from. But when you do feel emotionally safe and supported, maybe these kids in this situation, or maybe you're someone that had probably not, because most people listening to this probably have experienced a lot of trauma in their life, and have learned from it. And those experiences have shaped who you are. Just an example that the brain may actually interpreted challenges as very temporary rather than life-threatening versus someone that maybe felt they needed to be perfect to be accepted. And in neuroscience, this isn't viewed as failure of character. It's understood as the brain doing what it does best. And that's really building the internal models that help predict future experiences. Remember, it's trying to keep itself safe. It's survival. And this is also where manifestation becomes a much richer conversation. And rather than thinking about manifestation as simply changing your thoughts, and that's another thing, the whole changing your thoughts thing. Not all your thoughts are your thoughts. It may be more helpful to recognize that your beliefs influence what your brain notices and what it considers to be important. and how it's really interpreting events, and also ultimately the decisions you make. Those decisions influence the opportunities that you're pursuing, the relationships that you're building, and the direction that your life is taking. And our beliefs don't just influence what we think, they influence what we perceive. And really, of course, your brain can't consciously process every piece of information surrounding you. It can't process every second. Your senses are receiving an extraordinary amount of data. And if you consciously experience all of it at once, you quickly become so incredibly overwhelmed. And maybe that's what anxiety could be, or ADD. It's an overwhelming being able to sense so much energy. I've never even thought about that, but that's an interesting perspective. Instead, your brain, it's filtering information. It's really deciding what deserves your attention and what can safely remain in the background. And a simple example is buying a new car. Think about this for a second. The moment you decide on a particular make and model, suddenly seems like everyone else is driving the exact same vehicle. And those cars were always there. You just didn't see them because it wasn't in your perception. It wasn't the world that changed. It was that your attention changed. And the same thing is happening internally. It's all happening internally. Everything is within. For example, if your brain has learned that criticism, for example, is dangerous, then you'll naturally become more aware of criticism than encouragement. This is just another way to think about, like, the car. If you've developed the belief that opportunities are everywhere, your attention will begin noticing possibilities that someone else might completely overlook. Remember, everything is about perception, and it's what you're paying attention to. You have to know what to pay attention to through awareness. you gotta have the awareness first. You gotta start paying attention to what's going on. That's first step 101. And your attention is profoundly influencing the portion of your reality that you're consciously experiencing. So the brain can definitely change. I want you to know that. And one of the most hopeful discoveries in neuroscience is the brain is not fixed. So remember what I stated, that reality, energy, it's constantly changing. Remember what I said about trying to rake in the ocean and hold it? You can't do it. It just isn't going to happen because it's constantly moving and changing. And don't even get me started on the ocean. There's so much going on there. We could do an entire podcast about that. But for many years, scientists have believed that the adult brain changed very little after childhood. And this just isn't true. And because we now know that the brain remains remarkably adaptable throughout life, which is known as neuroplasticity, which you probably have heard of. And every repeated thought, behavior, emotional response, and experience is strengthening certain neural pathways in your brain, while others become less active over time. So they have less influence because you're building new pathways in your brain, which means that you're building new ways that your brain is functioning, essentially, which has an effect on what you're noticing in your reality. And what you notice is what you experience more of. So this doesn't mean that the change is happening overnight. That's a big part of this, is that people generally are not giving themselves enough time. I know that even with myself, I can get frustrated with certain things, and I'm really feeling that things are not happening quick enough. But we have to give ourselves time. We're in a 3D reality. It takes time. And people also talk about manifestation being instant, and there's so much crap out there that, could it realistically be instant? Sure. But could that possibly discourage you from having progress of what your journey is? Yes. Everyone's journey is different. everyone processes things different. Everyone has had a different experience. Some people, it takes longer to understand themselves. Some people have experienced more in their life that have created all these different layers on you that your nervous system is reacting to. We have to be gentle with ourselves and not think that each and every one of us is exactly the same. Let's be real here. This journey can be really messy. And part of the journey is accepting that and really allowing yourself to be able to grow. And in that growth is being patient. Being patient with yourself and loving yourself is the whole point. That's how you truly remember who you are, is giving yourself space to be able to get to know yourself, not the conditioning. And so, again, this isn't going to happen overnight, and nor does it mean that we're simply thinking our way into becoming someone else. You're not here to become someone else. You're here to be you. That's the whole point. Like thinking that you need to be someone else. That's also something I hear a lot about as a new me. What? What do you mean? You've always been all the versions of you. It's just you forgot. You forgot about the versions of you. Maybe you got an inspiration to move towards the timeline of the version of you that maybe you're aligning with, but you're still that version of you. That version of you exists because you connected with it. You became aware of it. It's always been there, though. It's just you weren't aware of it. So there's no such thing as trying to become someone new. You're all the versions of you that have ever existed. The past, the present, the future. In fact, the only thing that's existing all at the same time is the present moment. So all versions of you are existing right now. But you get to choose which version of you that you actually want to play. Think of it as a game. What do you want to play? What character do you want to play? What version of you do you want to play? Because you get to decide. And so I won't digress too much. Can absolutely happen with me. But let's stay on track with the episode. So all of this, your brain is constantly adapting to what is consistently repeated. The brain loves consistency. So be consistent. Pick something consistent. A lot of very successful people will tell you, start with making your bed every day because it's consistency. Start with some sort of workout routine, which also elevates your frequency. So it puts you in a higher frequency within yourself to be able to learn more about versions of yourself that maybe are more in an elevated state. I also don't like the hierarchy idea, so I'm careful with the words that I use and explaining to you that it doesn't have anything to do with hierarchy when I talk about frequency. It's just there's different frequencies that you experience different things on those frequencies. Like love is a different frequency than fear, right? Like you understand that. But consistency is really important. So getting into consistent habits can be really helpful in helping you to learn how to rewire your brain as well. So when we are repeatedly responding to fear, for example, those pathways become more efficient. So they become stronger. But when we repeatedly are practicing curiosity, emotional regulation, compassion, love, or new ways of interpreting our experiences, the brain is gradually strengthening those pathways as well. And I've said this the entire time, but awareness is important because we cannot intentionally change patterns if we don't know what to change. Like we have to recognize it first. So we get back to thinking about the high frequency mind. So what exactly is it? What is the high frequency mind? The high frequency mind is a contemporary philosophy of consciousness that is integrating neuroscience, elements of psychology, embodied awareness, and intuitive insights and inquiry, asking those big questions to better understand your human experience. And the neuroscience we've discussed today helps explain how the brain is predicting, filtering, has learned, and adapts. And those experiences are incredibly valuable because they help us understand many of the automatic processes shaping our lives. And so the high frequency mind begins where those discoveries are really inviting that deeper question. And if your brain is constantly predicting your experiences, filtering information and reinforcing beliefs and adapting through repetition, who's aware of those processes? That's a big question. Who's aware of that? That'll be in a future episode. But the practice of the high frequency mind is not about fighting the brain. No, we're not trying to transcend the human experience. That's something else I'll talk a lot about. You came here in this experience. You chose this on a soul level. You chose to be here. The spiritual community often talks a lot about trying to transcend the human experience, like you're somehow wanting to rise above it. Not you per se. But come on. Really? You chose to be here. You're here remembering who you truly are as an infinite creator, an infinite being, God source energy, not separate from source, in the vibrational frequency of love. That you're living as an awake human. Remembering who you are. You're not trying to transcend the human. The human is not some, dirty piece of garbage that we're throwing away. No, it's the most beautiful part of the experience is the human. It's it's such a gift to be here. And the universe is all based on polarity. So also the toxic positivity, the love and light culture. No, you're here for all of it. You're here for the mess. You're here for the light. You're here for the love. You're here for the fear. You're here for all of it. You're here for the damn experience. And when we accept that, that's when life actually gets really good. Because you become so strong. I'm not even going to say become because you already are. It's that you remember who you are. And when you can see the polarity and you can accept the polarity, nothing can take you down. Because you're not just looking for the light. You realize that the polarity is the gift. And so back to fighting the brain, we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to eliminate the brain or escape the ego. That's another one. The ego death. No, your ego is always going to be there. It has a very useful function. It's here to keep you safe. The ego is not bad. It's just learning how to control the ego. That's really what it's about. Like learning how to tap into your inner knowing versus trusting everything the ego's telling you. Knowing the difference between the two. You're not trying to escape the ego either. You have to have the ego to have a human experience. It doesn't die. It's not going to die, okay? It's never going to die. The ego's always going to be here if you have a human experience. But these predictions and attention and learning and nervous system responses that we have are all healthy aspects of being human. It's called being human. Being human, being awake human. Trust yourself, human. Inner knowing, human. But instead, it's about developing the capacity to observe these processes with greater clarity. And that's trust. That's trusting what you feel. That's trusting yourself. It's knowing thyself. And as awareness grows, we begin to recognize that many of our thoughts, emotional reactions, beliefs, and behaviors are not fixed aspects of who we are. They are patterns that the brain has learned over time through conditioning and experiences. And that recognition creates choice. And instead of automatically reacting from the conditioning, we begin responding with greater intention. Instead of assuming every thought reflects objective reality, we can become curious about where it's actually come from. Instead of living entirely through unconscious prediction, we begin participating more consciously in our own human experience. And for me, that's where neuroscience and the high frequency mind are complementing one another so beautifully, because neuroscience helps us understand many of the mechanisms involved in being human. And high frequency mind invites us to become aware of those mechanisms so we can engage with life more consciously, compassionately, and intentionally. And today we have explored several of the remarkable ways that your brain is really helping you navigate the world. We've seen that your brain is constantly predicting what it expects to happen, filtering an overwhelming amount of information, and strengthening neural pathways known as neuroplasticity that you use most often, and working closely with your nervous system to help keep you safe. And none of these processes are flaws. They are extraordinary adaptations that have allowed human beings to survive and thrive. Remember, you're not escaping the ego. Survive and thrive. Like the ego is part of that. The challenge is that many of these processes operate automatically, often outside of conscious awareness. And as a result, we can find ourselves responding to old patterns, familiar beliefs, and conditioned expectations without even realizing they're influencing how we experience the present moment. And this is where the high frequency mind begins. Because the high frequency mind isn't about fighting your brain or trying to silence your thoughts. No. It's not about predicting difficult emotions don't exist. And it's certainly not about trying to become someone you're not. Take those masks off. You don't want those on. That's exhausting. I was talking to a client today about that. That trying to be in survival mode all the time, of trying to be in an identity that you're truly not, is exhausting. And when you wake up, you start to see these fake identities everywhere. And you yourself realize how exhausting and how you may have been in survival mode for so long trying to be something that you're not. And you just don't do it anymore because now you're aware of it. And it just isn't appealing anymore. It's really about developing a deeper awareness of how your mind works so that you can recognize the difference between an automatic reaction and a conscious response. And when you notice your predictions, your beliefs, your emotional patterns, and your nervous system responses, something really powerful is happening. You create the space between the experience and your reaction to it. And in that space, you can choose rather than simply repeat. And for me, that is what this work, or I like to call it mission, has always been about. It's not about self-improvement. It's about self-understanding. And it's definitely not about self-help. This is about understanding yourself. I guess it could be self-help in a way, but it's eventually getting where you understand yourself. You're not constantly looking for the next course, the next book, the next certification, the next teacher. You're becoming sustainable. This is the era of embodiment. And what that really means is just that we're evolving beyond looking outside of ourselves for the answers. It's about actually going through what we need to go through to embody it, to know it. It's not about reading a book. I mean, I'm an author. Reading is great. I put information out because I want you to actually embody it through your own experience and get where you're maybe writing books or you're sharing information that your people need to hear, that you're here to help. But the more clearly we understand how our minds and brains operate, the more consciously we can engage in our lives, our relationships, and our own selves. Most important person in your life is you. But the science gives us an incredible foundation for understanding many of the mechanisms behind human behavior. But the high frequency mind builds on that foundation by asking a simple question that science is still exploring. If you can observe your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, think about this, and even the patterns of your own mind, who the heck is doing the observing? I'll leave you with that. That's a good one. And we're going to go so much more into deeper conversations in future episodes about the observer. But I don't believe that's a question anyone can answer for you. It's a question that you need to explore. And perhaps that exploration is where the greatest transformation is actually going to begin. Because asking questions and being curious is how you learn more about yourself, the true you, not the conditioned you, not how you were raised, you, the real you, the you that came into this world before the conditioning happened, your soul, your higher self, your essence, whatever you want to call it. And listen, I'm so excited that you joined me today. I think this was a really great episode. These episodes are going to go deeper into the high frequency mind. We're going to talk about so much this season. I have really great, amazing guests coming on. You are going to absolutely love this season. I'm so excited. If today's conversation sparks something within you, don't let it end here. Take some time this week to observe your thoughts, question your conditioning, and notice what changes when you return to your awareness. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow High Frequency Mind on Spotify or Apple Podcast or anywhere you love listening to your favorite podcast. And leave us a review and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. Every share helps bring these conversations to more people who are ready to see themselves, truly see themselves, and the world in a completely new way. And you won't want to miss the next episode here at High Frequency Mind. Because if you have ever questioned your intuition, doubted your inner knowing, or wondered whether you're truly hearing yourself or your conditioning, you won't want to miss this conversation. Because joining me is Julianne Thon, and we are going to explore consciousness, introspective hypnosis, and the path back to inner trust. So until then, stay curious, tune out the noise, go within, and I'll see you in the next episode here at High Frequency Mind.